has seen crucifixion. Doesn't exist until 500 years before Christ. This is 1,000 years. Verse 12, Psalm 22. Many bulls have surrounded me. Strong bulls of Bashan have encircled me. What is this? Bashan was originally Amorite land. Amorite land east of the Jordan, south of Mount Hermon, way up in the north of Israel. Beautiful, lush land. The snow on Mount Hermon sent down plenty of water into the north. These were well-watered pasture lands. Consequently, there were lands where cattle were raised. Great, strong bulls grew in the land of Bashan. And it represents the powerful and the strong. And so it is a symbol of the Jews, the powerful, the flourishing, the well-fed, the well-watered Jews. They surround me. They encircle me. They open wide their mouth at me as a ravening and a roaring lion. This is hatred, animosity, hostility, which is precisely what those well-fed and flourishing leaders of Israel were doing to Jesus as they surrounded him at the cross. And then he begins to describe something of what crucifixion is, even though no one had ever seen such. I am poured out like water, all my bones are out of joint, and my heart is like wax melted within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, my tongue cleaves to my jaws. Thou dost lay me in the dust of death, for dogs, another symbol, have surrounded me. A band of evildoers encompassed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. Wow. I can count all my bones. They look, they stare at me. They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. No surprises, folks. What was going on there was God bringing to pass the fulfillment of a prophecy from 1,000 years before. 300 years later, in 700, along came a prophet by the name of Isaiah. And in Isaiah 53, that great chapter in his prophecy, Isaiah describes this crucifixion before anyone had ever seen a crucifixion. Verse 5, He was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. This chastening for our well-being fell on him, and by his scourgings we are healed. In the next verse he says, God has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. He is pierced for our transgressions. The psalmist 1,000 years before says he will be pierced. His hands and his feet will be pierced. 700 years before, the prophet Isaiah says, and he will be pierced not for his own transgressions, but for our transgressions. There you have, folks, what sets Jesus apart from the other two. They were pierced for their own transgressions. He was pierced for ours. It is not the physical sufferings of Jesus that are unique. It is the thing they accomplished that is unique. 150 years later, still long before the Jews had been exposed to crucifixion, along comes another prophet by the name of Zechariah. And Zechariah, looking into the future, says, someday I will pour out on the house of David, chapter 12, verse 10, and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication, so that they will look on me whom they have pierced. And they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only son. And they will weep bitterly over him. Wow. Once they laughed when they pierced him, in the future they will mourn when they look back on what they did. David predicted the piercing of Jesus. Isaiah predicted the piercing of Jesus. Zechariah predicts the piercing of Jesus and a time when the Jews will look back and realize what they did. How could they have known this? How could they have known the Messiah would be pierced? Crucifixion didn't exist. This becomes the mark of his messiahship. Listen to Revelation 1:7. Behold, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him. And all the tribes of the earth will mourn over him. Who is even those who pierced him? The Jews. Someday they're going to look on the one they pierced. Well, so they pierced him, and they pierced the thief on the left hand, and they pierced the thief on the right hand. The thieves were pierced for their own transgressions. He was pierced through for our transgressions. It was not the physical elements of his crucifixion that were unique. They were not unique. It was the purpose and the achievement of his crucifixion that is unique. Yes, he was cursed, but he was made a curse for us. Yes, he was pierced, but he was pierced for our transgressions. It was foolishness to the Greeks. It was a stumbling block to the Jews. And they turned it into a joke, a farce, and a mockery. Someday, in the future, the Jews will view it differently. They will not laugh. They will weep. Once Jesus was dead, and the Jews had managed to lie about and bribe the Roman soldiers to lie about the resurrection, they had to justify what they had done. They had to keep up the joke that this Jesus was the king. They had to keep it up. So even after he's gone, even after he's died and they've denied his resurrection, he's ascended into heaven, they've got to keep up the comedy. Guess what? 70 A.D., the comedy ended. And it ended seriously and deadly. You may not laugh at the cross. You may not see it as comedy. Perhaps most people don't. But I'll assure you of this. Most people don't take it seriously enough. How serious is the cross? There is no salvation, no forgiveness, no heaven unless you embrace Jesus as your Lord and Savior and believe in the sacrifice that He offered at the cross to pay the penalty for your sin. You either take the cross seriously or you become an eternal tragedy. As I said, most people probably don't laugh at the cross. That was the ultimate blasphemy. And it's amazing when you look at that account and you realize that Luke says virtually nothing